Only 12 teams remain across the three divisions on the road of champions. Welcome to the Road to Champions. I'm your host, Brian Sweeney, the voice of the Women's Football Alliance Pro Division National Championship game. The opening round of the playoffs showed who still belongs on the Road to Champions. Let's look back at the scores and highlights of the opening playoff round. In Division 3, the Oklahoma Rage continued on their quest for a championship when they shut out the Sioux Falls Snow Leopards 54-0. The Rocky Mountain Thundercats kept the momentum going from the final week of the regular season by shutting out the Wasatch Warriors in back-to-back games, this time 36-0. The Richmond Black Widows also shut out their opponent and move on to the conference championship after a statement win over the upstate Lady Predators 27-0. And the Connecticut Ambush won a nail-biter over the Music City Misfits 7-6. Alex Wested is here to break down the big wins for the Rage, Thundercats, and Black Widows, along with the nail-biter in Connecticut.
Well, there's a lot of things that you notice, and going back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, Brian, the big thing we talked about again was the idea of not all Division III teams are created equal, and their schedules certainly aren't. When you have three bagels that are up on these score lines for this week, that's really where you start to indicate, and you start to see where that becomes a factor. Yes, I expected more out of Sioux Falls. Yes, I expected a little more out of Wasatch, but the really big thing that you like here is that close competitive game with Connecticut and Music City, two teams, different regions, playing in a different schedule, but both really in a good spot. And that back and forth nature of that game, you like what you see. One team has to lose, one team gets to win, and that was the one that I thought was the most exciting, the most important game for me in terms of what that looked like in this postseason matchup between these two teams. Otherwise, chalk the rest of the way. I think there's a lot of good things to look forward to in the semifinal round of Division 3, but we'll talk about that coming up in a few minutes.
And then the Division 2 playoffs. The Salt Lake City Wildcats kept their perfect season alive as they defeated the New York Knockout 27-14. The New Mexico Bonitas move on after a 30-2 victory over the Derby City Dynamite. The Baltimore Nighthawks stay unbeaten with a 28-16 victory over the West Palm Beach Coyotes. And the Cincinnati Cougars were rewarded for their show of sportsmanship when they postponed the start time for the Atlanta Rage, still came out victorious. Final score, Cougars on top, 32-24. Alex, the games in the D2 playoffs were some of the more competitive that weekend. Your thoughts on those games?
Well, and it shows again that there's that closing of that gap between the Division II level and the pro level. There's a lot of really good things you like out of this game. So you can take that New Mexico and the Derby City game, you can maybe throw it away with a grain of salt just because of how much of a travel gap, how much of a, you don't want to say talent gap, but certainly the stats indicate that. But every other game in Division II was really close, really competitive. Looking at New York and Salt Lake City, to have to travel across the country, to have to play at altitude for the first time this year, a good showing by New York, and I like that continued growth out of that knockout program. I want to see them at the pro level in the not too distant future. To me, it's just a question of when and when they continue to develop that talent. But the real fun games to watch here, Brian, those were in that national conference, and now you have a game set up where Baltimore has been so close to getting over that hump and getting to the national championship in Division II, and finally they might have a chance to do so. And even too, Cincinnati being behind to Atlanta, but having the resiliency to be able to surge ahead late in the second half. I love the resilience by Cincinnati after they lost in the regular season finale in Pittsburgh.
And in the Pro Division playoffs, the reigning national champion St. Louis Slam showed the Nebraska Pride that they mean business with a 56-0 victory. The Minnesota Vixen moved to 3-0 all-time in postseason play over the Cali War with an exciting 37-26 win. The Pittsburgh Passion will move on to the conference championship with a victory over the Pro Division first ever wildcard team, the Mile High Blaze, final score 48-6. And the DC Divas bring home their first postseason win in 7 years with a 35-17 win over the Tampa Bay Inferno. Alex, Minnesota was the only road team to win in the Pro Division in the first round of the playoffs. Your thoughts on this and the other 3 games?
Well, let's start with, obviously, Minnesota being the only team to win on the road. Also the only, truly competitive game. But let's take a look at this from the east side of the country all the way out to the west. You first look at D.C. and that massive statement win, finally being able to get over that hump and winning a postseason game for the first time in what feels like a millennium for one of the, not just the league, but one of the sport's great teams in the DC Divas. And so that's a huge talking point for them, just getting that playoff win. Same too for Pittsburgh. I've been critical about how they played at home this season, but with their regular season finale against Cincinnati and now this postseason game against Mile High, they seem to be proving me wrong. We'll see what happens again against DC coming up in this weekend's games. But then you move out into the West, and St. Louis, Nebraska, I said was a wild card. Nebraska, again, showed up, played the game, but St. Louis proves again why they continue to be one of, if not again, the top teams in the WFA at the Pro Division level by just demolishing is the first word that comes to mind in a game that was not particularly close. But the way that Minnesota and Cali in that game played out, where you were expecting that gunslinging show, you were expecting a lot of points and a lot of offense. It was the Minnesota defense that finally was able to buckle down and get the game turning play that not only was the first opportunity, at least since I've been covering this league, for Minnesota to win a postseason game on the road, but to be able to put themselves in, again, another matchup with St. Louis for a chance to go to the championship game. I loved what I saw out of the winners. It's going to be very tough in this conference final.
We'll be right back to look at the conference championship matchups. Welcome back. The only thing between the 12 remaining teams and a trip to Canton, Ohio is the conference championship games. Let's look now at the D3 matchups. In the National Conference, the 7-0 Richmond Black Widows are hoping to punch their ticket to Canton when they welcome the 6-1 Connecticut Ambush. And in the American Conference, the 7-0 Oklahoma Rage welcome the 4-3 Rocky Mountain Thundercats. Alex, Richmond and Connecticut have only allowed a combined total of 33 points all season, an average of under 2.5 points per game. And when the Rage hosted the Thundercats back on May 10th, it was the closest margin of victory all season for Oklahoma. Will any of these teams put up big numbers, or will this come down to the last seconds of the fourth quarter?
Usually what's something we see in these Division III games and in these championship games for the conference and the opportunity to go on to Canton, Ohio, usually we see these games either come down to the wire or be complete blowouts where nobody has a chance in whatever you want to call it, HE double hockey sticks, to be able to win. I think that both of these come down to very close margins, particularly out west, just because when you have the advantage of already having played an opponent at least one time, you can take that advantage and you can use that one way or another. And typically that second time we see a team, typically the points go down as a result, unless there's something glaring to take advantage of one way or the other. So that's what I'm looking at specifically in this Oklahoma Rocky Mountain. I think that game goes either way. When I look out east, though, again, the big thing for me for Richmond and for Connecticut is which team, Brian, has the ability to be able to score more points. Again, you have both teams coming off of a shutout in their postseason opener, and now it's on the offenses to be able to actually stop another team from scoring and continue to put points up. These games are going to come down and be points at a premium throughout all 60 minutes of football coming up this Saturday. I like the home teams. Historically, the home teams do very well in these conference championships. But if there's one that I look at an upset more than perhaps the other, I look at as the road team in Richmond and Connecticut. But home teams tend to win out when it comes time for it.
And in the Division II Conference Championships, the American Conference Championship will have the 7-0 Salt Lake City Wildcats hosting the 4-3 New Mexico Bonitas. These teams met June 7th, with New Mexico putting up more points on Salt Lake than any other team this season. And in the National Conference, the 7-0 Baltimore Nighthawks host the 6-1 Cincinnati Cougars. Alex, this is Baltimore's third conference championship in the last 4 seasons. Is this the year they make it to the big game? And do the Bonitas have enough on the road to stop the Wildcats?
So when I look at the Baltimore Nighthawks, it's a team that as long as we've been having this show, whether it's Road to Champions, Road to Canton, whatever it's called, Baltimore has been that team that we have always sat and wondered and asked, when are they getting over the hump? This is not just the 3rd and 4. This is the 3rd opponent in 4 years as well. You look at the game that they had against New York, where arguably they could have and should have won that game back in, I can't remember what the year was, 2023, I believe. And you look at the way that they played against West Palm Beach last year, another opportunity that they could have and perhaps should have won that game. So they sit here now with a Cincinnati Cougars team that's looking to do the double promotion and is playing their best football of the season, especially against Division II opponents. I really like Baltimore and Cincinnati in terms of a game of the week matchup. It's a great regional rivalry. It's a great postseason rivalry. And looking at this game, it could go either way. Yeah, home teams typically win in these levels, but both of these teams have great offenses, they have great defenses, and anything goes in this matchup. For New Mexico and Salt Lake, I look at that game and I say, yeah, New Mexico put the most points against anybody that played Salt Lake this season, but you also have to get a defensive stop. It doesn't matter how many points you score if you can't stop the other team from scoring. And when I look specifically at this matchup between these two teams, if New Mexico is able to get a stop or 2 or 3, then maybe they have a chance. But Salt Lake, they were number 1 in the Massey for a reason. And until somebody beats them, they are the number 1 team in Division II.
Now let's look at the Pro Division American Conference Championship. The 7-0 St. Louis Slam welcomed the 4-3 Minnesota Vixen for the 3rd straight American Conference Championship. These teams have already met twice this season, with Minnesota putting up more points than all other teams combined. This game will air on ESPN Plus at 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Alex, St. Louis has made it to this game every year since they rejoined the Pro Division, and for Minnesota, every year since the COVID-canceled season of 2020. St. Louis easily took care of Nebraska in the opening round, and Minnesota shocked Cali War. How does this game play out, and who moves on to Canton?
Well, let's first start with Minnesota again. You talk about a shock, having them beat Cali. It's not so much a shock. Again, they were separated by 0.1 in the Massey rating, so not really a shock, but maybe to the casual fan, yes. But either way, this game to me, and I could spend 5 minutes, I could spend 10 minutes on this game alone, just with how many times we've seen this matchup and how many times we've seen this rivalry go head-to-head, and as many times as my face has gone red talking about Minnesota and St. Louis over the years. To me, this game comes down to 2 things. And, you know, Minnesota St. Louis, in terms of the time that these two teams have been close, this is arguably as close as they have been at this postseason matchup since that 2021 campaign, maybe that 2022 campaign when St. Louis came back after taking 2021 off with the COVID restrictions still going on. And so when I look at this game, it comes down to, first, coaching. And that matchup, that head-to-head, for Quincy Davis, coaching against Ryan McCauley, who preceded Connor Joe Lewis, it was a very different style of coaching than how you have to coach against Connor Joe Lewis. You know Connor Joe is aggressive. You know that she takes big risks. And not just do they pay off, but they oftentimes pay off in spades. We've seen that with the onside kicks they've converted this year. We've seen that with the aggressive play calling on both offense and defense this year. So if you're Coach Quincy, you have to look at that and say, how can I plan my explosive, my big attack offense and defense to be able to limit those big chances? Because to me, this game for St. Louis needs to be decided in the first quarter. We've seen them before. A score, a second, a third, and they put teams away. If you are St. Louis, you cannot let Minnesota hang around, as they have done. They haven't lost to them, but you cannot let them hang around until that second, third, fourth quarter. You have to put them away and put them away early. If you do, we've been long talking about how Minnesota cannot get it done on the road in St. Louis. Eventually, that streak is going to break, as all streaks do. And for St. Louis, a defending national champion, this cannot be the year that that streak does. Do it? I'm not going to hold my breath on Minnesota, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Minnesota in Canton, Ohio.
And in the Pro Division National Conference matchup, the 5-2 DC Divas returned to the conference championship for the first time since 2019 when they traveled to Pittsburgh to take on the 6-1 Passion. These teams met twice in the regular season, with both teams getting the win on the road. This game will air on ESPN Plus at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Alex, this is a great rivalry, with these two teams meeting 6 times in the last 4 seasons. Pittsburgh has come away with 4 of those victories. However, the Divas came away with the most recent matchup. Can the Divas make it 2 wins in a row over Pittsburgh and make it back to the national championship for the first time since 2016? Or do the Passion make it to the big game for the first time since joining the Women's Football Alliance?
Well, you look at this, and it's a passing of the torch moment, not just in women's football. When you think about the rivalry of Allison Cahill with Amanda Congialdi, but you think about it in the matchup between these two marketplaces as well. You think about Pittsburgh and D.C., the big rivalry when you think of these two cities, Crosby versus Ovechkin. Well, at this point now, it's Congialdi against Chavez, because not only have we seen 2 really good matchups this year, you have a third matchup now that leads you to believe you don't know what you're going to see this weekend in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I know, obviously, that the broadcast is going to be good. It's going to be spectacular. But in terms of game plan, you had a offensive shootout the first time that these two teams played back in the early part of the season, and then when they play again in Week 7, you had a defensive struggle where you forced in D.C., forcing Makai Chavez in Pittsburgh to have to play hero ball in the late stages of the game, and it didn't work out in their favor. I was critical of the coaching then. I was critical of the decisions there where, maybe that result turns your way one way or another, but at the end of the day, it didn't affect the seeding. It didn't affect where things were, and I don't know what to expect out of this game. I will say, though, that if DC is able to force Chavez to have to play hero ball again and do it all herself, that's a big boon for the DC Divas and where they're at, because if they get enough defensive stops, Congialdi we've seen do time and time again, where if she can run out of clock and play out a game, she'll be able to take care of that. So for Chavez in Pittsburgh, you have to use all your weapons. You have to be able to spread the ball out and not force your quarterback to play hero ball in order to come away with a victory.
We'll be right back. Lois Cook continues her series of interviews with the athletes that make up the Pro Division. This week, sitting down with Amira Parker of the Houston Energy in her segment, A Timeout with Lo.
My name is Amira Parker. I play receiver, quarterback, running back, and DB, and I play for Houston Energy.
Maresh has a lot of time. Ball is up to number 0, and she's not playing. She was waiting on that thing to come to her hands. It is nothing but a H-Town Energy house call.
How did you get into football?
I've been playing since I was 3. It was like more of like my stepmom's kids. Like I've always watched them practice and play, and I just like always thought, I was like, yeah, like it looked fun hitting people, so I was like, yeah, I'm trying to hit people, and that's how I did.
Line to get good passes to her left.
There's
She
a nice
is
setup.
flexing.
That's a high ball right there. And a crazy catch by Rocket Parker, who keeps her feet in bounds and is going to try and hit a back juke. But what a catch there.
What are your top values in this sport to play this game, to be able to get out on the field and do your thing? What do you value the most out of that?
I would say the bonds. Like from the team I've been on, I've bonded with so much people, and it also allowed me to be more confident. Like at first, when I first got there, I was shy. Like I didn't talk to nobody. But now, like I talk to everybody. Like I'm not shy, and I've had an attitude with everybody too. Cause like I don't like people, but like from being on that team, they made me fix my attitude and become more of a team person.
Okay, so you've been in the league for 2 years, and you are one of the most talented. You've gotten to this point where, at the top of the top. What would it mean to you personally to be selected as the MVP of the league?
It would mean a lot because, like, from playing football since I was 3, nobody ever believed in me from where I was from. So being able to be picked as that, I feel like it would just mean a lot to me. I've heard that like I was getting nowhere. Like I've heard like I wasn't good enough because I was a girl. Like from where I was, I played with all boys. Like and obviously a boy gonna compete with a girl because you say you're a girl. So I always had to end up showing out, but it never like worked out because the coaches always felt like somebody was always better than me. Knowing I was the best person on that team, obviously since I'm a girl, he felt like I wasn't meeting his expectations because I was a female. Like I was the best one. Like I ran the route where I was the best. I would hit. Like I don't know. Everybody always doubted me. So being it does that.
So And what does that feel like for you? Because it's like you're proving yourself and you're showing yourself time after time, but yet they're still trying to hold you back. What does that feel like?
Well, like now I feel more confident since I'm obviously doing my stuff. I'm actually in college for football right now, and feel very confident because I'm here right now.
So what would be the message that, so there's other girls that might be 3, 4, 5 that are playing this sport or want to play this sport, and they might be coming up the same way that you have and dealing with those things. What's your message to them, to those girls?
I would say go for it. If somebody always trying to talk you down, I would say go for it. No matter what nobody's talking about, go for it. So.
Championship weekend is just 2 weeks away, and tickets are on sale now. The historic event will take place Friday, July 25th through Saturday, July 26th at the prestigious Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Tickets are on sale now through Ticketmaster at www.hofvillage.com. Alex, you and I will both be in Canton, Ohio, and we always look forward to talking with the fans of the game.
Well, I mean, that's the big thing we talk about. You know, I've been going to Canton, Ohio for 4 years now. You've been there all 5 of this deal that's been there, and each year provides something new. It's the opportunity to speak with all the great football fans that watch our program, but also watch this league grow. And whether it's at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, whether it's in downtown Canton, whether it's stopping by Mission Barbecue or George's Tavern, there's a lot of really good things, and I'm very excited to see everybody in a couple of weeks.
It's going to be great. Say hi to us for sure. Road to Champions is looking for a sponsor for the 2026 season. If you have a business that you would like to highlight on the show, send us an email at roadofchampions@gmail.com. For Lois Cook and Alex Westhead, I'm Brian Sweeney, and we'll see you championship weekend on the Road of Champions.